So fiction, the theme. This will be the first video. At very least, I'd like to make one for each week since we have 2 weeks in the theme cycle now. Um, Although I'm sure some themes can be covered in one video, so I don't know. We'll see how it plays. But the more recent themes have taken several videos to cover. In any case, being an author myself and being a very loving and gracious author, having spent my whole life just completely fascinated with the process. I can speak to this from a personal perspective in somewhat, uh, to some depth that people may not be aware even exists. For a lot of authors, or rather for a lot of writers, it might turn out to be the case that they come under contract, or they're employed by somebody to write screenplays, or to transform a novel into a screenplay, or to write a generic screenplay, or maybe they're a novelist who's put under a deadline. Their publisher has them under a deadline, and in many cases in many of these cases it gets to the point where a writer has exercised that ability, and they've exercised the talent for writing and built a great deal of skill in that regard. They become very skilled in rhetoric, and they know the niches, and they know how to write in such a way as to captivate an audience, and how to target certain people. How do rhetoric is a fascinating area of inquiry. There's a lot to it, and there's a reason for that. Your words are very powerful, and what scriptures and such don't speak to the word being the source of creation for no reason. There, there's a lot to that, but we won't get into it here. However, for these people become very skilled in rhetoric, and they know how to play that game, and they, as I said, they come under contract, or they're under deadline. It's just generally their employment, and so they write to make money because they have to. They write because they're under deadline. They write because they've been contracted, and it's a paycheck to them. And pretty much they pop out with a lot of generic stuff, and you see that all over the place with Hollywood, and most films, and television shows, especially like sitcoms and such. And then even novelists that write, they'll build a fan base. A novelist will come out with something that's inspired, maybe a series of inspired things, and they'll build a following, and then the publisher will have them under deadline, and they'll have to just kind of wing it and write something generic to cover their bases there, and to continue on. And so in a lot of cases, you see these generic writing, generic fictions all over the place that are, catering to a certain audience. And obviously the audience exists, so people like it. I mean, it's not often bad. It's usually good. These writers are skilled. They're good at what they do, but it's uninspired. Now, as as a an author of my caliber, and in such a way as to write, I've learned quite well to write only what is inspired, because if you start using prop writing to fill blanks, and just to cover, it doesn't turn out well. It turns out to be shit, at least from my perspective. I am a very extremely skilled writer. I've worked very hard to become one, and I can't allow for myself to put something shitty into form, into rhetorical form. So, uh, I, from coming from that perspective and writing what's inspired and putting love into it, there's a great depth to the process that most people are likely unaware of. People who are not writers, people who are not familiar with the process. But when you have inspirations, and especially if you're a spotter, because if you're a spotter, you can observe other people's works. You can observe the world around you. You can observe, just anything that's happening. Anything might be a value might pop up in your daily activity, or throughout the course of whatever's happening. A value, any single value could pop up that could have that inspiration, and it will unlock parts of the story for you. It's like it's almost like it writes itself. When that inspiration comes to you, it presents parts of your story and parts of your world, parts of your characters, parts of yourself that you didn't know were there. And um, this is one of the more fun aspects of being a spotter. The more uh, engaging aspects of spotting is that if you're in a creative process, if you are an author, and you create worlds, then uh, there are actually values out there. You are playing the game on a certain level, and on a certain higher level than most people. When you're seeking these values that are out there, there are values, strewn about, hidden, that you, of course, you have to have certain value configurations to lead you to them, to bring them to you. You have to have certain configurations of values to unlock them, to bring them to the surface and become aware of them. You have to play the game just right in a certain way, and you have to hit those synchronicities in order to reveal values that avail to you pieces of the world that you're building, pieces of the story that you're telling. And when this happens, it's like the story is being told to you, it's being offered to you, and you in fact become aware of your own creation, as though you're discovering it, as though you're actually like investigating it. You're exploring it. You're exploring the world that you're creating, rather than in the process of manufacturing it. It's almost as though it's already there, and you are on an adventure through it. And when when I create characters, I don't know about other authors. I don't really. There's not a lot. I haven't engaged with a lot of other writers like myself before. But when I create characters, those characters are shards of my identity. They're parts of my persona, that very specific pieces and values of configurations of values within myself. You could say they're kind of like little fractured personalities within my mind that um, I identify with them, and in doing so, I love them, and I put love into them. I invest in them, and I put such detail into creating their personality, and who and what they are, how they feel about things, and these characters come to life. They take on a life of their own, and they have considerations, they have opinions, they have knee-jerk reactions. They react, and when an inspiration presents itself, and I become aware of a part of the world that I'm building, or a piece of the story that I'm telling, when that something happens, those characters in my mind, they'll have the reactions, and the considerations and opinions, and the life that I've given them, that I've invested in them, the love that I've invested in them, and they'll respond to the story as it's being told. So, again, they're living. It's not like I don't plan ahead and decide exactly what they're going to say or do. They do it on their own, because it's like it's almost like I've programmed an artificial intelligence in these characters, and it responds to the fictitious world that I'm building, and the story that I'm telling. And so they actually live, lives. They're in there, and this life is ongoing, obviously, because I come across values that unlock extra parts of the story, more depth and history to the world that I'm building. And so, in that kind of way, they are in there. They're in that world, living lives, and doing things, and it's happening, and it's very much like, you have to consider at that point that you are, like the scriptures say, the the word, you know, the biblical scriptures say that the word is God, and that, you know, the word is creation. The world was created with the word. Um, you know, and other scriptures say this too, because it's a prominent factor. It is, in fact, there's a reality behind that. There's a reality to all of religion. I apologize for bitching, you know, being a shithead to religion so much lately. It is factors of my personal experience that caused me to do that. I got fed up with super religious people that were trying to tell me, and others trying to force themselves upon others, and you know, just badmouth them and be shitty to them because of whatever religious arguments they're having. So um, I actually plan to go ahead in the future, in the near future, and, you know, make up for that by speaking to the positive values of religions, especially biblical scriptures, because there's a lot to it, and we can all learn a lot from it if we're looking at it in the correct way. But um, you know, the scriptures say that the word is creation, that creation came from the word, and then, you know, we know that God is love, that love makes up everything, that that's the primary value, and then, you know, you're going to go ahead and create a world within your own soul, within your mind, by investing in it, by putting love into it, and you're gonna make it with words. And that is the job of any great author, is to not necessarily to kind of build a story piece by piece, but to create a window to that world, to that story. When inspirations transpire and they give you pieces of the world and pieces of the story, it's your job to find the very best way, the very most effective and most you know, excellent way to uh, present it, to explain it, and to tell that story, to define things. It's the job of an author, any author that gives a shit, you know, one that has passion about their work. They're going to challenge themselves to do better and better. They're going to challenge themselves. Like I give myself personal challenges on stretching sentences. When I wrote my own part of my own personal biographical story for Megan, for Sweetie Cheeks, I pulled off a 134 word sentence with perfect grammar and syntax. Is not a single problem with it. It was a perfect 134 word working sentence. So I think I think that's my bar right now. That's the best I've done yet, but that's a challenge I issue myself. Of course, with the work that we're doing right now, Randy and I have presented this. Well, Randy presented it, but we're both, you know, now we're working on. We hope other people are going to jump aboard. I hope you jump aboard. It's not tough to come up with two sentences, you know, and drop it on there. And you will become a part of this conglomerate project, which I promise you is going to be a big deal. We're gonna do something big with this. We're gonna get it published and get it out there, maybe even make money off of it. In what case, if you're part author, you're part beneficiary, aren't you? So whatever the case may be, it's going to build a following eventually. It's going to build a fan base, and it's going to be your fan base if you contributed, if even just two sentences. So please do that. But the challenge I'd say to issue to myself and to you guys here with that is, you know, you have two sentences to work with in a turn. You can take multiple turns if you want to, but you know, you got to wait for somebody else to pop two sentences first before you take another turn. But what can you do with those two sentences? How much can you influence the direction of this story in two sentences? I challenge you. Let's see what you guys can do. I know that there are authors amongst us. I'm thinking of a few in particular that are very excellent, and I'm gonna get on there, you know, bust their balls about getting on that. In any case, you know, I haven't been interacting with you guys a lot in a long while, and I apologize for that. It's just things got tough for me, and kind of out of control, and I just I was bummed out, honestly. I felt like, you know, it was just getting too tough, and I have so much going on elsewhere with Twitter and with other accounts, and, you know, with other groups that we're working on other projects and the campaigns that I really have to fight to make happen. It's just um and of course I got problems at home that are kind of keeping me away. So it all comes together to be I kind of felt bummed out, and I almost started to kind of give up on you guys. You know, a lot of you, not give up on you, on the group, on the members, but on the directive. I started falling short and not really putting forth the effort and the excellence to get on there and make sure that you guys are inspired and motivated to get something going here, and take care of you guys in that regard. But I'm gonna get back on it. So in any case, as I was saying, it's an author's job to build that window, and to make that window as effective and as beautiful as they possibly can. So that's really what the challenge is to just be more skillful with writing. But insofar as creating the story and the timeline, and the characters and all that goes, it really is something that kind of speaks to itself. It presents itself to you, and it's you have a relationship with this story, these fictions that you create, that is evolving and continues to happen, and it's very much alive. And so when you know personally, when I invest love into building a story with my word that is alive for all intents and purposes, and it's made up of values, and it has relationships and associations, and it's made out of words and love, and it's a brilliant, beautiful microcosm of creation, you know existence as we know it, the reality of existence and of creation. It's just the most beautiful little microcosm of that representation. You'd say kind of a metaphor, an analogy, or a parable, or whatever. Any of those will work. But it's just I really love it, and I'm exceptionally happy that I am such a talented author, because I mean it's the perfect line of work, for somebody that's in my field, that has my interest. I love it. I genuinely, wholeheartedly love it very much, and I suppose that I'm not sure if I was going anywhere with that. That's pretty much it. That it's again, it's a cosmological scenario where an author, and pretty much any artist really, is going to be doing this to some extent or another, in some way or some fashion or another. But most specifically, writers, authors that create fictitious worlds, that it it's exactly the same as existence, as a larger, it's a microcosm. And then also, those characters might create their own fictions. There's got to be authors in the world you're creating, right? So, and there's going to be fictitious, like shows and plays. I always have humorous little shows and stuff, and especially stage plays in my stories, humorous stage plays, and performers. So there's a microcosm within that microcosm within that microcosm, and again, it just goes on for eternity. And it is it like, as I said, is a cosmological scenario as usual. Everything, especially what we work with, but pretty much just about everything, is cosmological. That's it's going to be a microcosm of some other macrocosm, or vice versa. And the more that you get into this, the more prevalent it will become in your awareness, and the more you'll learn from it and understand it, and B, the more that you will be capable of reaching, either down the rabbit hole into smaller microcosms, or throughout infinity into greater macrocosms. You can explore via the psychic vehicle. You can maneuver through realms unseen, and it's just it's an amazing thing to get into, cosmology, and it encompasses everything that we work with. So I would have to advise studying up on that, getting interested in that, working with that, because um, pretty much that's, for the most part, that's going to be how any practice spotter is going to start to develop their patterns, you know, their routines and their cues and prompts, and their considerations are going to be determined by their you know, their examination of cosmology in play. So there you have it. That will be our first fiction video, 20 minutes. Hope you guys watched it. I very much hope you enjoyed it as well. Thank you for watching. Thank you for the time you've given me. Thank you for, you know, everything, especially if you do get involved with the work that Randy's doing, and if you check out my works on DeviantArt. I hope you do, because that's any of you that check it out, that's what inspires me to continue making it for you. So please do. Um, Thank you very much for everything. Terviuni Ciari Kila Salai. Namaste.